welcome to the Nerd Social. I'm Nathan.
And I'm Colin.
So we're starting pretty late tonight. Had some technical difficulties streaming to Facebook, but we resolved that, and hopefully all the streams are working properly. So tonight we're going to talk about What If Season 1, just do I guess a general review of the entire season, but also give our rankings for the episodes because this week a Assembles episode was released on Disney Plus, going over the making of the show. Mm-hmm. Also, we're going to talk about Dune Part One. Well, I guess it was always known as Part One, but now it actually got a sequel. We know a sequel is actually going to happen in 2023. So we're going to review Dune Part 1. So, I guess where do you want to start with the rankings? I guess it start at the bottom of our list. What do you have?
Yeah. I think spotting the list will be good. I think the episode that I remember at the bottom of the list, I kind of made this all like the last few days, kind of thinking about all the episodes overall, and it was pretty hard to kind of separate some of the ones that, there were ones that we kind of throughout the season we kind of said we kind of agreed upon that it was going to be, this is going to be in somewhere near the top, and then there's some we never really got to like the bottom part of it, and it was kind of hard to choose at first, but then for me it was a little bit easier once I kind of knew all the episodes' names and I remember this and I remember that. So for my number 9, I think I would have to go with the Killmonger rescuing Tony Stark episode. I think that I remember from our review of that episode that I had a really big misgiving about Killmonger. Not so much because it kind of alluded to that he might have turned in some ways because he was part of that team at the very end and all the previews and stuff. And then he really didn't turn. He really was just as evil as he was in Black Panther. And again, he was kind of justified in some of the things that he was espousing and things. But again, there were some things that I was turned off of. And I really remember that was one episode that really bothered me. So that would probably be my number 9 episode for What If.
Yeah, I don't know. It's not at the bottom of my list, but I understand what you're saying. So they did say, if you saw the Assembles episode, they did say that they made these changes to these different universes, but they tried to keep the essence of the characters pretty much the same. So T'Challa, if he goes off, he still was raised the prince, and he was going to be king. So what would that be different? What would be different if he was raised king? For me, my bottom episode, and it's not because it's like terrible or anything. It's just that it's not. It's okay, and it's just like the funny episode is the Thor episode. I forget what the exact title of it, but Thor.
It was if Thor were an only child.
Only child. Okay, if Thor were an only child, that's the bottom of my list. Just because and it's not even like I feel like it was a terrible episode. It's just that the tone of it was completely different than everything else, and it was kind of like a light episode. So I don't think it's bad because it was actually bad. I just think it was bottom of my list because it was a lighter episode and it was kind of throwaway, and there was some stuff happened at the very end that tied into the season finale, but still wasn't really clear what happened at the very end that tied into because he seemed confused. So the only thing that could describe that or explain what happened at the end is if that was a different watcher who was like, what's going on? Because the other watcher knew what was that Thanos was taking over. So I don't know. So that's why that was at the bottom of my list. What do you got for number I guess number 9? Sorry, number eight. Sorry.
So number 8, I would have to go with the very first episode. What if Captain Carter were the first Avenger? I think that because the first Avenger movie itself wasn't that strong because you're dealing with a different era. You're dealing with nostalgia from a different time period. It's kind of old generation type of thing. I think that a lot of those type of elements were introduced in this episode, and when I did my rankings, it kind of didn't measure up as much as say the other ones in terms of excitement, in terms of just the feeling of the whole episode. I think it mirrored too much of Captain America: The First Avenger, the good and the kind of not so good about it. And so because of that, I think that it went down on my list, even though I think that they did a good job of trying to introduce the What If series with the Captain Carter episode. It was a good introduction. And I think that also we saw a lot of it from the previews before the What If episode, the What If season even started. So that we already kind of knew what was sort of happened, not the end of the episode, but kind of knew the gist of the whole episode. So for me, it was pretty much down on the bottom of the list, near the bottom of the list, because of that, because of all the elements of, again, the first Avenger movie.
Yeah, I think I definitely have it higher on my list, but I understand what you're saying. I think, and I'll talk about this when I get to it. I think that what I really liked about this episode was the action. It was a good introduction to the series in general. So it, and some of the set pieces, the action set pieces, were really cool to me anyway. Number 8 for me is the Hank Pym assassination plot, and it's not like that's, again, it's not terrible. It's and we get a connection to it at the very end, and I actually liked the plot, the whodunit kind of thing, and I actually appreciated what they did. Where they didn't go completely there, but they almost went there with the blowing up of the Hulk and everything. I appreciate them going that gory and that dark and basically killing all the Avengers. But as a story goes, as if there was any kind of heart or to it, like I think there was a little bit of heart missing there, and that's probably why it's lower on my list. But that's the only reason that it's lower on my list. But just like the Thor episode, it's not a bad episode. None of these episodes are bad. If you think that we don't like the episodes, and go back to our previous reviews, we pretty much like all the episodes, but I think that's why it's lower on my list and just reviewing the entire season.
Yes, I definitely agree. I think that it's just, again, not that all of them are bad. It's just, it's very hard also when you get to the top 3. It gets very difficult to kind of sparse out what are the elements that are that are great in the episode, and again within a 30-minute time slot. For me, this episode was number 7 on my list, actually. So the title kind of doesn't give anything away, because it's like, what if the world lost its mightiest heroes? Yes, it kind of give that away, but the mystery behind who did actually kill them was very fascinating. I think that when I watched it, it was definitely very fascinating. But then as the season kind of went along, it just kind of went lower and lower on my list. So at the time, it was definitely good. And I definitely enjoyed the story, especially with Black Widow. Definitely enjoyed it. But again, it just, as they kind of build it up, as the season kind of went along, it just kind of fell further and further down the list. So there were definitely some really interesting elements to it, with, like you said, with Hank Pym, and also with Loki, taking over the world in some ways. So definitely some cool things that are happening there.
Yeah, and number 7 on my list is actually the Killmonger episode. So I think you had it as 9. So
yes.
Yeah, I have it as 7. I liked it a little better than you did, because I wasn't expecting Killmonger to be good. I guess there was always the possibility there, but like I said, if you watch the episode of Assembled that they did this week, they never were going to do that. They were trying to keep true to the character and just see what the world would look like if he was a little bit different, or if he had a little bit different circumstances. I appreciated the science bro stuff, because it's usually Bruce and Bruce and Tony. So it was cool to see Killmonger since he has all that the background very similar to Tony's. I appreciated that sequence. I also appreciated, how cold blooded and calculating he was. I think we talked about this when we reviewed the episode, like just how he set people up in a very calculated way. It even what's his name? The villain, the other villain, is just escaping my name right now. Claw. Claw said, I wouldn't want to play chess. I wouldn't want to play chess with you. So just seeing him manipulate people like that was interesting. The only reason that this is lower on my list is just because how it ended. I feel like they didn't have to tack on the Shuri, which because it just went nowhere, and it's not like it went anywhere later on in the season either. We just saw them running into the room and try to take down Killmonger. It's like, okay, I guess that they put that there so that this couple seconds makes sense, but if they just ended and it was obvious he was going to take over Wakanda, and it would have been fine. That they could have tacked that on to the last episode. So that's why it kind of got lower on my list. So yeah. So what do you have for 6?
So for 6, I thought this was going to be higher than I imagined at first, but it was the Ultron episode where What If Ultron won. It was definitely one of the darkest ones in terms of what if, probably a very dark type of thing. But I think looking back on it, it wasn't as dark as, say, the other ones that are on further up my list. And I think, again, they kind of get thrown off by the fact that it has Vision's face. And so you mentioned about how, the Ultron face kind of goes over the Vision's face. And again, this is actually fairly interesting as well, kind of him destroying the planets, and then having the action scene trying to kind of outmatch the Watcher in some ways. So that was very fascinating in that regard. But again, it was kind of dystopian and a little bit depressing about what happened in terms of the overall story, due to the nature of, again, Ultron kind of taking over everything there is to know in existence, pretty much.
Yeah, it's right out of it's right out of your top 5, but it's in my top 5, so it's actually it's number 5 on my list. I'll get to it in a second, but like I like the episode for a couple reasons that I'll talk about soon. But the number 6 on my list is actually the zombie episode.
Oh.
I think that I liked it a lot. For what it was, but the tone was kind of all over the place. I when we talked about this, I think we mentioned that it was sort of like a Zombieland thing.
Yes,
but Zombieland. But you also wanted to feel. They also changed the tone sometimes, where they wanted you to feel bad for the situation as well. So the tone was kind of all over the place. They kind of left it in a weird place as well. With Thanos, and it was very unclear later on the season when Ultron got zombies dumped on him, if it was the same zombie world or a completely different zombie world, because we saw Captain America falling out of the thing. I mean, we only saw the top half of him, so maybe he was crawling around. But yeah, it's maybe because of what they didn't do anything else with it. I think if they revisit this world in season 2, this might move further up my list, but right now it's at number 6.
Yeah, for me, so yeah, I think that again, it's further up, and I'll kind of reveal that one later on. For my number 5, it was actually What If Thor Were the Only Child. I think I liked it a lot more than you did. I liked the fact that it was a little bit of a change of pace, because of the fact that we had really, like in the previous 2 weeks, we had really depressing ones. And I think that they really needed to change the tone of it. And I really did appreciate kind of like the banter, and also the interaction that he had with Carol, and it was kind of tongue-in-cheek in some ways. it was like a fear, like you said at the time, like it was like a few Ferris Bueller's Day Off type of thing. So it was really cool in that way. I kind of like those kind of like slacker movies. Just the overall jovial tone of it, just kind of like, again, partying it up. And then you saw some of the other space characters in a different type of environment. Again, you saw Thanos, you saw T'Challa, Star-Lord, you saw Nebula in a different tone. So it was really interesting in that regard. You saw Howard the Duck. So there's some really good elements to it that I found that, again, I was kind of really depressed after the last 2 weeks, and then having this lighthearted episode was a good change of pace for me. So that's why it was higher on my list.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So that was number 5 for you. For number 5 for me, as I said, is the Ultron. What if Ultron One episode where, and I think I like this basically, and I guess we're just one off because you had it at number 6, right?
Yeah.
I think I like this episode for a couple reasons. The Age of Ultron movie wasn't really an Age of Ultron movie. I mean, it was named Age of Ultron, but it had nothing really to do with the comic book. So it was interesting to actually see if Ultron really did take over. Because he wasn't really much of a threat in the movie. They kind of beat him up every single time they interacted with him. So
right.
it was cool to see. It was cool to see Ultron. What the world would look like if Ultron took over. And also, I really appreciated this episode for focusing on just 2 characters. So like just Natasha and Clint, and what it would look without all the other superheroes, just having them shine. I think Lake Bell does a really great job voicing Natasha in this episode, and I think they got Jeremy Renner to come back to voice his character.
Right.
So just seeing how like worn down he was at this point, like not only is his family dead, but everyone else is dead. He's kind of like given up. They reverse the sacrifice scene. Arnim Zola coming back, so I appreciated a lot of this episode. I mean that even him getting the Infinity Stones wasn't necessarily didn't necessarily have to be in this episode, but I did appreciate that specifically because of the Watcher Ultron fights. So as they were breaking through different dimensions and everything, that was just cool to watch. And as Ultron was pounding on him, and as he was going through, and how they illustrated the barriers through dimensions as glass. I think when we reviewed that episode, I mentioned that that's the same way that America Chavez breaks through universes as well. She has a star symbol. I mean, she kind of creates on the ground, and then she breaks through that. But it's very, very similar. So I guess that's the aesthetic that they're going to go with in the Marvel universe. So that's why it's number 5 on my list.
Yeah. So moving on to number 4, I think for me the number 4 episode is the T'Challa Star-Lord episode. I thought that I would have it higher because, but looking back on it, it was definitely very difficult as we got into the top 5. So it fell down to number 4. I think that the premise of it was really, really fascinating. And also just to see at the very end what happened to Peter Quill instead of having T'Challa up there. Peter Quill's kind of more of a middling individual working at a Dairy Queen. So it's kind of fascinating to see that part of it. And just again, because of his charisma, how T'Challa kind of united a lot of different people together. You saw Thanos in a very, very, very different light. You saw Nebula in a very different light as well. And so it was really fascinating to kind of see that kind of different iteration of a character. Even though, like Thanos mentioned that, oh yeah, I kind of thought like that, but then because of T'Challa kind of showed me the way, then I changed my ways in some ways, and then I basically wanted to follow him like the true natural born leader that he was. So it was very fascinating. I think that the one thing that kind of drew back was about how they really didn't address. Well, they kind of addressed how he was missing all this time, and they tried to find him, but they didn't realize that he actually went to space. I mean, they could have put two and two together maybe a little bit, but that's just a small thing. But overall, I thought it was a very interesting episode and a very interesting premise. And during the previews when I saw it, it was actually something I was very intrigued by.
Yeah, I think you said that's number 4 on your list.
Yep.
Yeah, it's higher for me, but it's not that. I mean, it's one of the it's in my top 2.
Okay.
So and I'll get to why it's higher for me, because it's not, like I said, it's not like you had it as number 9 and I had it as my top 2. So I'll get to that in a little bit later. My number 4 was actually the Steve Rogers, the Peggy Carter, Captain Carter episode. So
Okay.
I appreciated this for a couple reasons. Like you said, it's basically beat for beat. No, almost beat for beat the first Avenger, but I understand why they put it at first, just to get people who are unfamiliar with multiverse stuff, unfamiliar with comic book stuff, for the uninitiated, basically. I mean, there are a lot of MCU fans who aren't comic book fans. There are a lot of MCU fans who are not sci-fi fans, and different universes changing everything, or being completely different or slightly different is not something that those people are used to. So I understand why it was far more subdued than the rest of the episodes.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, I appreciated it for establishing the style, the house style. Some of the lighting some of the lighting in that episode was just so beautiful and cinematic, and they kind of talked about that in the Marvel Assembles episode that they did this week, and how and you really appreciated it when you saw it, and I'm glad that they talked about how that was their intention, to make it look like, okay, it's a cartoon, but it's not like any other cartoon that you saw before, any other kind of animation that you saw before. They're gonna kind of play with light, kind of do lens flares and things like that. So I really appreciated. And because it was also, you can kind of see in that episode that they played with light a little bit differently than they did in the other episodes as well, because it was also a period piece.
Mm-hmm.
So I appreciated the art direction in that episode probably the most out of all the episodes, even though it's not my number 1. I also, even though most of it is beat for beat, I appreciated them finding something to do with Steve. Something that is plausible given how smart Howard is. If they got a hold of the Tesseract, and I also look forward to what they're going to do with Peggy Carter in season 2, because my understanding is that Peggy Carter is going to be a bigger character and have more interactions with the Watcher in season 2, and you could see that by the end, because that was the last scene in the entire season is she possibly being reunited with Steve in some sort of Winter Soldier sort of thing. So I appreciated that. I mean, it's lower on my list. It's not number 1 or 2 on my list because, as you said, some of the beats were exactly the same as the movie, and it's not like the Captain America movie was like the best MCU movie. It's kind of like it's Phase 1 movies, which are all okay except for Iron Man, and they're just kind of leading up to Avengers, which is an awesome movie. But like I said, I appreciated the art direction. I appreciated some of the different turns that they went, and also the fight scenes, like what they decided to do with her. The extended scene where she is flying on the back of the Hydra Stomper in the air, and then she crashes through the airplane, and they just had the camera following her like a movie, basically, and it's all one shot, and then she jumps out the back of it, and that was just cool. So yeah, that's why it's number 4 on my list.
Yeah. In terms of number three, I actually liked the Guardians of the Multiverse. Was the final episode of season one. Just kind of everything comes together. Yeah, all the characters come together in many ways. Also, there's some type of resolution with some of the characters, with Killmonger and also with Black Widow. Off the top of my head, some resolution to that. It was kind of nice in that regard. Also with Doctor Strange as well, and Ultron being in that bubble. So it was really fascinating to kind of see all those pieces that we saw coming together in that beautiful way, and also the artwork for the room that they were in, the bar that they were in, was really fascinating to watch all of that spectacle as well. And then the zombies kind of falling down on Ultron. So there was definitely some really interesting ways in which they were working together as a team. And also just again, what if the Watcher kind of got involved, and we kind of predicted that he was going to get involved no matter what, because the threat was way too big. And yeah, I think it was a very enjoyable final episode for me overall.
Yeah, it was number three on my list as well. So
Okay.
we're of the same mind there. I appreciated this episode a lot. I think that it would be higher on my list if they had given it another 10 to 15 more minutes. So to let some of the scenes breathe, because they kind of skip through it very, very quickly. Like the Wanda and Ultron fight.
Yes.
I wanted to see that a little bit longer. And there are all kinds of other things in there. The setup before Ultron showed up on the planet could have been a little bit longer, so that these people actually, I don't know, got to know each other a little bit better. I guess the assumption is that they were in that bar for a very long time, and then they got to know each other there or whatever.
Hmm.
But the reason it's so high, it's number three on my list, is because, like you said, there a lot of what you said. I appreciated a lot of the connecting all the episodes from the season. I appreciated when they got back to Natasha's world, the fight that they had, where it was basically playing keep away with the Soul Stone, and they're hitting Ultron with two two shields back to back,
Right. Right.
and tag teaming him, Natasha and Captain Carter. The action in this episode was awesome and very well thought out, and very
Yes.
very creative. So yeah, I mean, as I said, the zombie episode, it wasn't really clear where the zombies came from, if it were from the zombie episode, or if they were from a different episode. But I would have liked to see at least Zombie Wanda fight a little bit longer. See what else I think I'm trying to think of if there's anything else I didn't like. But it's not like I have to list lots of things I don't like, because, like I said, it's number three. It's not like like number nine. I think
Hmm.
in general I like the episode. I just like a couple other ones better than better than this one, because it was just more self-contained, and you really need to see the previous episode to understand this episode. And I would have liked it if it were a little bit longer.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
So speaking of zombies, that was actually my number two,
That was your two.
because
Okay.
I actually loved the zombie episode. I mean, there was a lot of hype before it online about
Mm-hmm.
the zombie episode, and I think that it just opens up a lot of possibilities for the supernatural world. I think that Marvel, hopefully, will get Blade up and running, and that will be really awesome to get him up and running, because I think that the original Blade movies, looking back on it, I mean, people probably didn't watch it as like big time Marvel fans, but like people of the comics really liked that film, and then I also kind of enjoyed that film. After rewatching it multiple times, it really helped. But having said all that, I think that the zombies is a good type of introduction to that type of world. I think that the scenes in which they were in Grand Central Station was very eerie to me, because I spent a lot of time there.
Hmm.
So it was kind of, it hit home a lot more than I had anticipated, and just the eeriness of it, the setup of it was really fascinating. I think that there's definitely a lot of tension there, and it also the ending with them like being optimistic and flying in the Quinjet and then going to Wakanda and then Thanos right there being a zombie. That was a shocking ending, and it's like again, like what I said about one of the episodes being depressing, and that's why I need the Thor episode because it was depressing. It's like they're going to their deaths, like they are literally going to their deaths because zombie Thanos, and then like a whole army of Wakandan zombies right there. So definitely, and then Ant-Man, with his Futurama head. So that was really funny bit as well. So there was some really good lighthearted moment like that. But again, the whole episode was pretty depressing. A lot of Marvel characters die, and yeah. So I think that overall it was still pretty near the top for me.
Yeah, like I said when I said it was number six for me. The only reason that I think that I definitely want to see the zombie world more, and it might go higher on my list if I see more of what happened because I want to know. It was just like you said, the way that it ended was very depressing, and like
Yes, it was.
and I'm not sure how they wanted me to feel about the episode because they were doing all kinds of jokes at some points, and then they finished with like zombie Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet.
Yeah, that's not gonna go well. Anyways, go on, keep
Yeah.
going. Yeah.
No, so I don't know. We'll see. What they do was because I can imagine them trying to do a zombie episode pretty much every season, and it being slightly different, and even not even being the same world. They can riff on it different ways. But yeah, I'm interested to see more of the spooky or the macabre or the horror part corner of the Marvel universe. I think that a lot of people did probably see the Blade movie. That's it's credited as the beginning of a lot of these superhero movies, but no one actually thought of it as a superhero movie back then. So it's now that
Yeah.
they're going to fold Blade into the MCU. It'd be interesting to see him interact with people in the MCU when
Yeah.
Mahershala Ali takes on that role a little bit later.
Definitely. Definitely.
So, do you want to get to your? What did you? That
Oh,
was your number two. My number two was
that was
actually
yeah.
the Star Lord
Hmm.
T'Challa episode. I like this episode for a lot of reasons. It was good to hear Chadwick Boseman for the last time. Unfortunately, one of the last times. I you could hear in his voice that he was having fun with the role, as a less stern, more loose version of T'Challa, and in
Hmm.
the I know this from press releases or um, press interviews rather with Kevin Feige that they were actually thinking of trying to integrate some of that into T'Challa's role in the movie, and that he mentioned that again in the Marvel Assembles episode that dropped on Wednesday as well. So it's just
Hmm.
unfortunate that we're not going to be able to see that. But also, I just like heist movies, and this is just a cool heist movie, very short heist movie, and it was also funny. And it was funny. I think it was a funny in a way that the humor in this tickled me better or more than the humor um, in the Thor movie, where it's like the,
Hmm.
the Thor movie is kind of like the Thor episode rather was kind of like frat boy humor, whereas this is more like
Hmm.
a acerbic kind of like highbrow, not necessarily highbrow, but like witty
Hmm.
humor. So the Nebula having not being as ravaged because her Thanos had a talking to with T'Challa, so she doesn't have all her pieces missing. Apparently, Carrie Ann Gillian came up with that cha cha thing. Uh, in the booth, so they just ran with it
Wow.
according to the Assembles episode. So yeah, and it also kind of ends in a weird place, but I think they pick up the thread of that better at the end of the season than they did with a lot of the things a lot of the other ones that ended in a weird place, because we see that the Ravagers come in and try to save Peter, And at the very, 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 very end, we see Peter joining the Ravagers. So, yeah, that's why it's number 2 on my list for all those reasons.
I think that our number 1 is going to be the same, but again, just to review, my number 1 was the Doctor Strange episode. I think that it had a lot of heart. It was very emotional, and I think that it had a lot of action, and just kind of the going through that torturous soul journey of Doctor Strange was very fascinating. Kind of like the different multiple layers of how he was able to become the supreme sorcerer, and then by the same token, he then had to go into, the Watcher then recruited him to be part of that Guardians of the Multiverse. So, it's almost a kind of a redeeming quality for him after what he has done. So I thought that it would even be even more of that, maybe potentially going into Spider-Man 3. But what we have so far of that Doctor Strange, of that version of Doctor Strange, was definitely a journey in itself, in terms of the emotional journey, the traumatic instances of watching your significant other die time after time after time. That must have been killer for him mentally. So I think that going through all those emotional toll, and then becoming the Supreme Sorcerer, and then again having kind of a bookend at the end with Ultron there, in that bubble with Ultron. It kind of reminded you of the kind of time loop that he had with Dormammu in the movie. Mm-hmm. So in that sense, I think that it did a very good job of tying all those pieces together in some ways, and also having a good beginning, middle, and end to his story.
Yeah, as you said, it's number 1 on my list as well. The episode kind of floored me, and I kept thinking about, as other episodes came out, if other episodes got as high, and no other episode got as high, just because it was a very nice self-contained story, and it was very relatable. Like he went off the deep end because of love, and it was just interesting to see him go a little mad for like hundreds of years, trying to figure out a way to get the woman he loves back. And also at the beginning of that episode, before he goes mad, just like all the Groundhog Day elements of like trying over and over and again, it's always ending in tragedy. It was just dark and deep, and how it ultimately ended, where the Watcher was like, I can't help you, I can't do anything, but that was also the turning point in the episode turning point in the season, where the Watcher's just starting to get closer and closer and closer. And they talked about this in the Marvel Assembles episode as well, the behind the scenes episode, where they purposely made the Watcher a little. He was further and further away at the very beginning. He was kind of like this cosmic being in the stars, but in the Doctor Strange episode, he's closer and closer. He's over his shoulder, and at the very end, he actually talks to Doctor Strange after he destroys his universe. So that was also an interesting element of the episode. I think from the Marvel Assembles episode, Jeffrey Wright. I think this is Jeffrey Wright's favorite episode as well, because he said that this is the one that really got to him, because it was just it just leaves you with this haunting feeling, like at the end. It's like no happy ending. His universe is gone. Even though he showed up in the Guardians of the Multiverse episode to sort of redeem himself, because he's trying to save other realities. His reality is gone. He single-handedly destroyed countless trillions or of lives across his entire universe. So yeah.
Absolutely. And basically his penalty, or his penance, is pretty much being with Ultron in that contained bubble universe.
Yeah, Ultron
You
and
know.
Killmonger and Arnim Zola, because Ultron got
Oh
killed.
yes. Oh yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So he has a bubble inside of his bubble that he has to watch
Right. Right.
for as long as eternity. I assume he's gained immortality at some point as well over the hundreds of years that he was amassing powers. So
Hmm.
yeah. All right, so that's the end of our list. But we're really interested to hear what your ranking is. So comment down below with your ranking. What we're gonna do is switch gears a little bit and talk about Dune, the movie. But before that, please like and subscribe. This is the only way that our algorithms actually know that we exist and how other people actually find our videos. So if you like this content and like more content like this, so like and subscribe and comment down below about our conversation. So moving on. All right, so we're gonna move on to Dune. As I said, I'm gonna read the press release description of it, and we're gonna do a spoiler-free talk, and then we'll jump into spoiler talk. This is the press release from Legendary or Warner Brothers. A mythic and emotionally charged hero's journey, Dune tells the story of Paul Atreides, a brilliant and gifted young man born into a great dynasty beyond his understanding, who must travel to the most dangerous planet in the universe to ensure the future of his family and his people, as malevolent forces explode into conflict over the planet's exclusive supply of the most precious resource in existence, a commodity capable of unlocking humanity's greatest potential. Only those who can conquer their fear will survive. That's the press. All right.
Interesting.
So that's the spoiler-free press release version or summary of the movie. So what did you think of Dune? Spoiler-free talk right now. What did you
Correct. So I actually watched it on HBOMax. I did not go to the theaters, but I can definitely see why. You know, I know you said, Nathan, that you went to see it in on IMAX. Was it?
Mm-hmm.
So I could definitely see why you should try to, if you can go to the theaters, to watch it in theaters, because it is really, there's some really stunning scenes, and Nathan, you could probably talk about that. Overall, my impressions is that, number one, the movie is a very slow burn, so there's going to be some parts to it where it's almost like dead space in some ways. It's like it's not that it's boring or anything like that. It's just dead space. It just kind of, you feel as though you want to move the story along, but then it's necessary to kind of build up certain elements later on in the movie. So that's first thing. Second thing for me is that there's definitely, you can see why George Lucas was influenced by Dune.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of it reminded me of Star Wars, and of course, Dune preceded Star Wars. But because of how the movies are, it does remind you a lot of Star Wars, especially Tatooine, especially Jakku. A lot of that type of scenery is relevant to that, and also a lot of the military stuff is very similar to Stormtroopers in many ways. So there's definitely the Star Wars element that's in there. You cannot avoid it, and also with some of the main characters, which we can get to during the spoiler part of the review. Third thing, of course, online they talked a lot about the white savior complex. It does exist, unfortunately, so we can talk as to how does it exist, where was it in the movie that was pretty evident, and things like that. All-star cast, just like I said, I think because of the all-star cast, I was very intrigued by it, and it was number 2 on my list of most anticipated movies of 2021. So I was really looking forward to how all these different well-known actors and actresses interact with each other. So it was really fascinating in that way. And also, finally, there's a lot of shocking deaths. It was just interesting in that regard. They just kind of did that. It was very Game of Thrones in many ways, that
Yes.
all the shock that's involved. But we won't get to who actually died, but there is a lot of shock there. And then finally, just the fact that people in the beginning would get thrown off, and because of the slowness of it, you're like, okay, if people are confused as to like if there are more parts to it, it kind of gave you a sense as you watch the movie that hey, it's not gonna be covered within this one movie. There's got to be some more to it. So it just kind of left you with that feeling, even though you may or may not have known that, or you may have when you watch the title, the title, it literally does say, dude, and then something there that tells you I won't spoil it here, but it just kind of reiterates that, yeah, this is a pretty long story overall. So those are kind of like my general 5 points regarding non-spoiler Dune stuff. Is your sound there?
Sorry, sorry.
It's okay.
Yeah, I as you said, I went in IMAX last week, and I saw it at a very late showing, around like 10 p.m. on Saturday, and I'm glad I saw it in IMAX. For some of the slower parts, it's some of the slower parts are him taking beautiful shots of the desert or other landscapes, and it's kind of breathtaking, the cinematography in the movie, that cinematography in the movie, so that it really is worth seeing it in IMAX if you can. I think I mentioned to you guys earlier in the week, when we were talking in pre-production, that it kind of reminds me of my experience watching The Dark Knight Returns, where a lot of the first sequence of that movie is shot primarily in IMAX. So every time I watch it on cable or actually own it, my mind goes back to those original images. So when I watched it later on in the week, on HBO Max, my mind filled in the more grander the grander images that I saw in the IMAX films, IMAX screen. So if you can see it on IMAX, I understand that it's difficult because of the pandemic. Try to find a showing in the middle of the week or something like that, where there aren't a whole lot of people. There weren't a lot of people. I searched like 7 different movie theaters before I found a movie theater that had the amount of people that I would feel comfortable being in the movie theater with. No one was near me, but I wanted to get one where there was like at least a row of people, like a row between me and someone else, and I was able to find that. So after you feel comfortable, if you can find a showing that you feel comfortable going to, I definitely say you should definitely go and see it in IMAX to get that experience. As far as the White Saber thing, we can get into that a little bit later on. That's definitely there. There are also some other elements there that are somewhat problematic, but that's in the original. That's the original source material. So it's kind of hard to get around that without changing the story fundamentally. I think that what Denis Villeneuve is probably going to do is play around with the motivations of the quote unquote people who are being saved, and give them more agency in the next movie. So I mean, without getting into the specifics of that I think that's probably how the tack that he will take. And I kind of know that from some press release this week when they mentioned that they're going to do a second movie of the series. So Timothy Chalamet, I really don't know him from much of anything. I mean,
I don't either.
I know the name, and Hollywood has been telling me his name for the last several years. So I knew that he was a movie star, I guess. And he has a very unique name. But this is the first thing that I've actually seen him in.
Mm-hmm.
I know he was in Call Me by Your Name, but I didn't see that movie. I know he was in Lady Bird, but I didn't see that movie either yet. I mean, they're on my list, but I haven't seen them. But he's I think he's perfectly cast. He was a really good actor. He kind of has movie star good looks. He's also
Mm-hmm.
he also looks like the 15-year-old that he's supposed to be, even though he's in his early 20s. Um,
Mm.
uh, and if he doesn't work, the movie doesn't work, and I think he definitely works.
It's true.
So the the Rebecca Ferguson as his mother also does a really great job here. I don't know if I remember her from anything off the top of my
Mission
head.
Impossible, and also
Okay.
the Star series, the Spanish, the was it White
No,
Princess or Spanish Queen?
the White Queen,
White
or
Queen.
the White.
Yeah.
Okay, or the yeah, okay. Yeah. So, but I think I haven't seen her in that. I have seen her in the Mission Impossible stuff. I think this is the best that I've seen her. She does a great job here, and I'm looking forward to what they do with her later on.
Mhm.
Oscar Isaac does an awesome job here. They have so many great people in this cast.
Yes, they do.
Oscar Isaac, who you may know as Dameron from the new Star Wars movies. I think they give him, even though he doesn't have a lot to do in this episode. Or this movie. I feel like they give him a bit more to do, and he has more grounded scenes in this movie than he had in all of the Star Wars movies. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, if I'm forgetting something. I know the second movie in the Star Wars series, he had a lot more to do, but I connected with his character more here. Um,
Yes,
and
agreed.
for some and saying why would be spoilery, so I'm just going to say that I connected with his character here. Josh Brolin plays Gurney Halleck,
Hmm.
who is, I guess, one of Duke Leto's like generals or lieutenants. Skarsgård, who is from the Thor movie,
Hmm.
plays Vladimir Harkin, our main villain. Dave Bautista plays his
Nephew.
nephew.
Yep.
Zendaya is in this as well. We'll get to her part in this. I think she plays she isn't used as much as you would think from the marketing, but
Hmm.
she's definitely in the movie.
Oh
Um,
yes.
um, who else should I?
You also
Jason
have
Momoa.
Jason Momoa.
Jason Momoa is Dank Idaho. He plays it. He plays it. He seems younger in this than I've seen him in anything else. Maybe because they shaved him.
Hmm.
He's just like, I think Jason Momoa is like 4 or 5 years older than me, and he looks really good in this. I keep saying episode because we usually we usually
What
review,
if?
we usually review episodes. But he
Yeah.
looks really good in this movie. And he plays a really great part in this movie, and he's very charismatic, as Jason Momoa usually is in everything that he plays.
Hmm.
So he does a great job here. Um, Javier Bardem is in here in this a little bit, and
Yep.
David Dashmalkin, which I didn't know
Yes,
when I watched it.
he's
That
here
Dave,
again.
but Dave,
Suicide Squad, Batman, Ant-Man. Now he's in Dune. I mean, this guy
Dave,
always appears.
yeah, David Dashmalkin is in this as well, and like he's in everything.
Yeah.
If it's a genre thing, look in the background, look at the corners. You might see David Dashmalkin somewhere.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
I don't think he's sewed up in the Star Wars universe yet.
Nope, not yet. Still time.
But he's in Dune. He's in the Marvel universe. He's in the DCEU. So yeah. So yeah. I generally I really like the movie. I think there is some slow parts to it. I watched it at like 10 p.m. So I nodded off at a couple places because it's a 3 hour
Yeah.
it's a 3 hour movie, and it's a little
Yeah.
slow in places. Um, uh, but I also think that if you're watching it at home, you might nod off at some of the places where I didn't nod off because it was just beautiful and beautiful to see. Um, when he was doing shots of just landscape of Dune, of Arrakis, and also of the Atreides homeworld, which is escaping me off the top of my head. So yeah, I enjoyed the movie. I do think there are some problematic elements that we need to discuss, but in general, I think it's a recommendation from me.
Yeah, definitely a recommend. I would say a definitely recommendation for me. Yes, there are some problematic elements which we will address, but I think it's very visually stunning. I think the all-star cast is great in their roles, and I think that everything kind of revolves around Timothée Chalamet, and he did pretty well, he did pretty well overall to kind of hold up the movie because it really is his movie. So
Mm-hmm.
I think that having him at the center of it, and then the all star cast kind of backing him up with great roles, I think it just speaks to his talent as well.
Yeah, and actually, in the chat here, I'm looking at CH Chan mentioned the Hans Zimmer score. Yeah, the score was also pretty good. It matched the movie's tone very well. It added to the atmosphere of the movie. It was haunting where it needed to be. He created. I watched a interview with Denis a couple weeks, like a week ago, where he mentioned even in scenes that you wouldn't necessarily think were music heavy, there was a lot of sound design done by Hans Zimmer, and he contributed a great deal to the feel of this movie with the music and also the sounds that he created. So that was also a great addition to the movie. And you mentioned, we also mentioned a couple times that it's slow in parts, but I think that the contemplative nature of the movie is set up in such a way so that you actually feel something when those deaths happen, because you mentioned that deaths happen.
Yes.
If this movie was, if they tried to cram everything into one movie like they did in the 1984 movie, the deaths of people wouldn't necessarily mean anything to you, but they establish relationships, and they establish these people in the first, I guess, hour or so of the movie, hour and a half before things happen, and you kind of need that so you actually care about whoever's going to die if they die, right?
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. Exactly.
All right, so we spent a whole lot of time talking around the movie. I think we can actually start getting into spoiler talk. So if you haven't seen it, go and see it. It's on HBOMax, or see it in the movie theaters if you can, because it's definitely worth your time. All right, so with that, spoilers ahead. Spoiler alert. All right. So what do you want to jump into first? What do you want to talk about first?
Do you want to go straight toward the elephant in the room, or
the Messiah thing?
Yeah, do you want to just go to that, because I think that's kind of obvious here.
So there's this thing that's actually happening with a couple sci-fi shows and properties that I've been watching. So we haven't been reviewing Foundation, and at this point we're nearing the end of the season, so we're probably not going to review this season of Foundation. But they also did this in Foundation, where they code people as Middle Eastern-ish, or they code people as black. And on Foundation, they have black people, and they're on a planet and they're backwards. And also they have Middle Eastern people coded as Middle Eastern, and they're terrorists. So they have Dune here set up with people who are not necessarily all Middle Eastern, but they're definitely brown and black people, and he's set up as the Messiah for these people to set them free. Not only but they. I don't know if this is. I didn't really watch the 84 Dune. I think that there is some commentary on this in the movie, because it's difficult.
Yes,
it's difficult to actually get away from what's in the book without changing it completely. Like I said, And the commentary that they have in there is that the fact that he it seems like he's doing this reluctantly, right? He's like he speaks to his mother when they reach Arrakis, and they said it's the Bene Gesserit trying to basically manipulate things. They see me as this because they've been manipulated for the last couple hundred years to say that, oh, this Messiah is coming. So it's a commentary on they try to do some commentary on these myths and these in the manipulation of people in power. So I appreciated the nuance there. But yeah, at the heart of it, you have a genetically modified kind of like almost like a eugenics white savior, because his mother was part of a breeding program. He was part of a breeding program. Like she. This is not said in the movies, but she is possibly the daughter of Vladimir Harkin, and then she was told to go breed with an Atreides, to create an offspring, and the Bene Gesserit have been breeding people for the last several hundred years to try to come up with this savior who could see the future. So there's not just the white savior stuff in there. There's also like very troubling like eugenics stuff in there, which because the Nazis and stuff. So that's problematic. But yeah, we will see, as I mentioned at the top when we were talking about this spoiler free, what they do in the second movie, because I didn't say this earlier when we were doing spoiler free, but the shift of the movie is supposed to shift to Zendaya, because she didn't get much to say or do in this movie at all. She was mostly just the focus of his dreams for the entire movie. So you got a lot of shots of her. So they used a lot of those shots in the marketing, but the shots that are in the marketing are as contentless as the shots that are in the movie, because she doesn't speak. They're just shots of her and their visions of her. She speaks at the very end. And she gets the last word of the movie. She says this is only the beginning, but she doesn't really get to say anything. They do give some brown folks some agency. Specifically, they give the doctor some agency, and that doctor, I think, was they did gender bent that role, because it was in the book and also in the original movie it was a man. I do not like that. They have I think 2 dark-skinned people in this movie, and they both die. Who am I thinking of? Who's the other?
The other one that died? I don't remember.
So she died.
She died. I know that.
I forget who the other person was.
The when they did the fight, the kind of like the Black Panther-ish type of fight.
Yes. The very end. They have they have 3 dark-skinned people in this movie, and two of them are die. So they definitely have more. They have more brown people than in the movie who survive, but actually people who are dark-skinned, they 2 of them died. That wasn't awesome to me, because I was watching that. Like we saw the other dark skinned person was the person who actually came on behalf of the emperor to at the beginning of the movie to hand off the Atreides hand off Arrakis to the Atreides. So yeah.
Yeah, I think that for me, I think the quotes really kind of sold it, because I actually did not want to believe, because we are in a woke era, that hey, let's kind of evolve from that. But the thing was the dialogue that was in there. It made it seem as though yes, they are going to go with that, and I can sense that yes, he was very hesitant of it. Paul was very hesitant of it, but they kept saying it to him. Like
Mhm.
the Fremen kept saying it to him, and I'm
Mhm.
like, could have been taken out. Could have, but whether or not if you take it out, would that again affect the source material in some way? So I think that they did what I mean. Denis Villeneuve did what he could with what he got, and I
Mhm.
think that it is still problematic, and it's still kind of like you're outdated in some ways because you still believe in that, and that it is still a problem. So I think that it does reflect in terms of how there's again some sorts of science fiction, even with the beginnings of Star Wars. It's like again, Star Wars is inspired by Dune. So in that sense, you can definitely see that there's not many people of color that are in these kind of beginning sci-fi inspired type of movies, and it's reflected upon the audience, in many ways, because I think I think that if you grew up as a child, you probably, if you were a person of color, you probably did not get into Star Wars that much, unless you were a very big fan of James Earl Jones, but you really didn't get into it because it just didn't. It's not relatable in some ways to you.
Mhm.
And I think that Dune kind of has the same type of effect where, if I mentioned Dune to a group of, to a group of people of color, they'll be like, what is that? Like,
Mhm.
what is that? Oh, that's inspired by Star Wars. Oh, Star Wars. Okay.
Mhm.
And it's like, they kind of pass it off as like, it's not that, it doesn't relate so much to the lived experiences and what have you.
Mhm.
And so I think that there's still some elements of that. There's some elements of Dances with Wolves in there as well. So which it's the ultimate white savior type of movie to
Mhm.
me. And so I think that, again, he kind of danced around with it, but then there was some dialogue that was there that kind of made it as though, yes, we're gonna lean into that. And again, we're supposed to be much more of a evolved society now, and I don't know why they needed to kind of revisit that.
So I think that they did make some adjustments, and I'll talk about this in a second when we talk about Vladimir Harkin, because he's a lot worse in the book and also in the previous movie. But yeah, I see. So Xie Chen mentioned that Paul feels guilty about being bred to be a white savior and criticizes the Bene Gesserit, but he also kind of just goes with it because
Yeah,
ultimately he was raised as an aristocrat, right? And he lost his house and he wants the power. So he's gonna chase the desert power that his father was trying to get in the first place. So
sure.
he's gonna kind of go with it. And he kills someone at the end who he had visions of being a mentor to him.
Right.
So it's interesting.
Obi-Wan moment. It was an Obi-Wan moment. That's why I was like, use the Force. It's like,
Yeah,
oh yeah, that's where it
yeah.
come from, pretty much.
Yeah, yeah. So you mentioned earlier that a lot of this stuff was influenced Star Wars. So the Bene Gesserit basically influenced the Jedi with the
Hmm.
voice. Although I gotta say that they did the voice in this better than any Jedi mind trick ever, because they actually showed you what it looks like to be on the receiving end, and I think Denny broke down that scene with the mother
Hmm.
and Paul
Yes.
when she calls him across the room. He kind of just blacks out, and they have the scene. They have it look like the scene that he blacks out and he's arrives in another place. So it was very effective way to show what happens when you're called over by someone using the voice. I also appreciate that they layered on, like, when someone is using the voice, they're not pulling from themselves. It seems like an echo of like all the mothers or all the women who were in the Bene Gesserits. Like they're pulling from some force of all of them together. So there was just like a bunch of layering of a bunch of women underneath it. Even when Paul uses it, there are women's voices underneath of his voice when he and echoing underneath of him. So I appreciated that. he I don't know. I think they just in the original movie they just made him sound louder. He just so I appreciate the attention to detail there. Another comment here. So the filmmakers were kind of like, "Hey, we addressed it. Okay, so just go along with it." Even the hardcore, even the hardcore Fremen are down. So you shouldn't complain. I don't know. So like they have space to correct it. Like I said, if they actually are going to give Zendaya's character Chani more agency than they did in the original movie, because she's pretty much a non-character in the original movie because they're trying to cram the entire book into one movie. So if they give her more to do, and even if the majority of her people are fooled by him being a savior, if at least she and some other people, like they have Javier Bardem, if they know if they know what is down, and they're using him for their own means, not just to rally their people, but also to be a kind of like a thorn in the eye of the emperor, because really what they want is their freedom. If they have a way of writing themselves out of this to give these people more agency, kind of use him as they need him, not just to, like I said, rally their people, but as a tool against the emperor. That's how they can write themselves out of the white savior corner that they kind of put themselves into. But we will see what they decide to do in the next movie. I mean, they have 2 years to make it now, so they luckily because they didn't shoot it back to back, they can actually take in some of the criticism and make some take in some adjustments, make some adjustments. So yeah,
sure. The only one thing that I want to say about Zendaya's performance is that I think that I guess got the sense that it was kind of playing off the indigenous exotic type of character, female character. You saw it in Pocahontas. You saw it in many different other types of movies and things like that. There's a little bit of that, and I was like, again, okay, she baby steps in some ways. It's like, yeah, she was presented like that, in his dreams, this exotic female figure, very attractive. Eventually they're going to have some type of romantic relationship. You kind of knew that was going to happen. And, and then, in reality, no, not actually. She does have some authority. She does have some presence. And, yeah, obviously she kind of is intrigued by him, but she's not like falling all over herself to kind of like, oh, let's kind of like bow down to the white savior type. But in some sense, I think that, like you said, I'm hoping that Denis Villeneuve looks at that and says, give her more agency, to do more and to become more of a leader to the Fremen, and along with Javier Bardem's character as well. So I just think that yeah, they kind of again relived that type of stereotype again, but hopefully it goes off and say, no, you shouldn't do it like that. You shouldn't think like that. You should think of it from this kind of broader perspective.
Yeah, because they gave her so little to do, it's difficult to tell what the intention there was. But I did note the difference of how he dreamt about her and how she presented herself. Because the way his first interaction with her presenting herself to him is that she would have killed him if he tried to move against her people. She let him know that I wouldn't have let you hurt my friend. So she didn't even let herself know. She didn't let him know that she was there until the altercation had resolved itself. So that was interesting. And also, I guess, a sense of honor. They gave her a sense of honor because she just like, yeah, this white boy is gonna die, so I'm gonna give you my knife so you die with honor. So that's really the only to things that we know about her. She's very protective of her people, and she believes in her. She's very committed to her beliefs there. So
Right.
and I that's enough to make me intrigued about her, and I hope that they write her well in the next movie.
Yep. Yep. I hope so too.
So moving on to, like I said, some of the things that they did change. Vladimir Harkin, played by Stellan Skarsgård, he did an excellent job.
Oh yes,
he's not.
I liked his performance.
Denis Villeneuve mentioned in an interview that I watched last week that he wanted to get away from him being like a giant fat baby, kind of like body shaming, I guess, fat people, and make him more like a gorilla. So like much more imposing, much more threatening, and he does have more. They put a fat suit on him, but he definitely looks more like a gorilla. Like he's not like obese. He's obese but he's like in a way that, you know, he could mess you up if he like kind of like Kingpin. Kind of
yes,
like
Kingpin. That's why I kind of looked at was he was more kind of Kingpinish, and it was like, wow, that's pretty stunning, and I was really intrigued by the evilness of him.
Yeah,
and it was like the fear that he instilled upon the Harkonnen as well, like the bend to his will type of thing. Yeah. And I think that was fascinating, rather than the 1984 version, which was kind of a ripoff from Jabba the Hutt. It was kind of like. He was far
more cartoonish, whereas the way that Stellan played him is very subdued, very sinister, very. Yeah. He just makes your skin crawl if you're in the same room with him.
Yes,
it's like,
absolutely.
And I really appreciated them doing that. The other thing that they got away with, they removed, is the fact that he had like little boys around him in I don't know if they had it in the movie, but they did have it in the books. Like he was like abusing little boys, and I feel like there was like a tinge of homophobia because the character is gay, and there's a problem in Hollywood in general at making the gay characters villains, either killing them off if they're not a villain, or making them villains. So making him a pedophile on top of being gay was too much, and I'm glad that they took that out. Yes. What they need to do, if they're going to, they didn't even mention his sexuality in this movie. If they do mention it in the next movie, they need to have other gay characters who are not evil, to balance that out a little bit. I don't care if they keep him as gay. I mean, they're gay people like any other people, or can be all kinds of things, right? As long as they don't just have the villains as gay, then it won't be problematic. So we'll see what they do in the next movie. But yeah, I really dug him and like, as much as I wanted Leto to kind of get him, I'm kind of glad he didn't get him, because I want to see more of him, because he got, I think he killed, did he kill David Dastmalchian's character in that scene?
Yes. Yeah. With the poison. Yes.
Yeah. So David Dastmalchian's character gets killed in that scene, and pretty much everyone else in the room except for him, because he rose above the cloud, the mist of the thing, and he basically hit out on the ceiling. But he did get hurt. He did get scarred. Right. So yeah, that was interesting. As I mentioned, the Oscar Isaac character, I really liked him in this episode. I keep saying episode, in this movie. I really liked him in this movie. He could see the weight of the responsibility, or the house, on his shoulders. How seriously he took that weight, and also how precarious he felt, because he knew that the Emperor was kind of setting them up for the okie doke. He knew that he. I mean, no one was ignorant, except for Paul, because he's supposed to be 15 years old. No one was ignorant of the fact that the Emperor was setting them up. So he was you saw him on the planet, very stressed out about, we got to get the spice production back up. We got to fortify we got to secure this and that. we gotta forge alliances with the Fremen because that's the only way that we're going to survive. And unfortunately, all his plans didn't work out because not only is Harkonnen going after him, but the he gets Harkonnen goes and gets troops directly from the Emperor to attack him. So
Yep.
it's unfortunate that we're not going to see Leto anymore. But I really appreciated what Oscar Isaac did with this character. I really felt bad when he died in this movie, and you could see like a single tear roll down his eye before he broke that tooth, just him. You can think about the inner turmoil of everything that he lost, as he was killing himself and hopefully trying to kill the Duke Harkonnen. So yeah.
Right. I think that yeah, definitely you felt it for him. He did a very good job of, in the first, like you said, in that first hour of really breaking down all the intentions and why he did what he did. And he's kind of like more of a high level bureaucrat, but at the same time, he's leading this group of people into this new territory, on the behest of the emperor. So a lot of pressure on him. As well, it was interesting that they kind of alluded to the mistress. That was kind of like a 1 minute, 2 minute scene that he had a mistress or something like that, which is interesting in itself because you kind of figured out that he was in a marriage that he actually did not really like. That was another layer involved with having his son, but then he really didn't love his wife in some ways. It was more of a almost, I would say, a political marriage maybe.
You're talking about Jessica Trades, or are you talking about the Rebecca Ferguson character?
Yes.
Well, I think that he did love. So, from my reading is that he did love her because he said.
Okay.
So Jessica wasn't married to him. Jessica was his concubine. And they actually mentioned he actually said in the movie before everything goes down that he should have married her. So I think that he had some deep feelings for her. But I don't know because of her station or because of because she wasn't of noble blood or whatever, or he didn't know whether or not she was in noble blood because like I said, in the books, I think that she is actually the daughter of Vladimir Harkonnen, in which case she would have been a noble blood, but she was also a Bene Gesserit. So I think Bene Gesserits take people from anywhere. So it was unclear what her lineage is, it was unclear to him what her lineage was except for the Bene Gesserits. The Bene Gesserits knew what they were doing because they were doing eugenic stuff. So maybe that's why he didn't marry her. She was just a consort or a concubine. But he had a son with her. Unfortunately, that's how a lot of like dynasties work. Like in the past, even the children that come from concubines still have claims to the throne or claims to the family. But yeah, they were never married.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, makes sense now.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I didn't get that. I didn't kind of get that part. This is right before he got poisoned and got betrayed by the doctor. So I was like, that they did a very quick scene about that. Like, I should have married you or something like that. So I didn't really understand that part. And then I think when Vladimir said like, oh, your concubine is gonna die too, and I was like, who's that? Or I that's why I was like kind of unclear about that part of it. But yeah, I think that it's definitely some elements to his character which are multi-layered, and they did really a good job with the time that he did have in order to kind of flesh him out a little bit more, because it could have been a very throwaway role for him, and the writers could have written him in such a throwaway role. But I think that it gave him a lot of depth and a lot of character development. So yes, you do kind of feel bad for him when he did die, in a way where he doesn't even know if his son's alive, if his concubine is dead. You didn't know. So a lot of those things, that rush of emotion kind of led him to kind of be backed in a corner until he had no choice but to kill himself. So, and to kill the others along with him. So that was pretty fascinating in itself.
Yeah, and I don't know if she was officially her concubine or just his consort. It might have been the Duke trying to talk down about her, but she wasn't married to him. She was never married to him. Speaking of her, I really appreciated her acting in this. Like I said, I think this is the best I've seen her. I think her best scene in this entire movie is probably Paul's best scene as well. When the Reverend Mother or the priestess mother comes to see him, and she is outside that door, and you can see her agonizing over this because she has her vows as a Bene Gesserit sister, and she has to obey that. But she also knows that her son might die, and she put her son in this situation because she was told not to train him, and she did train him. And now that she trained him, now the test has to happen because if he can't control himself, they have to kill him. So you can just see her agonizing over that, and then we get the famous quote. If anyone knows anything about Dune, even if they don't know things like spice and the Bene Gesserit or the Atreides or whatever, the fear is the mind killer thing. The line they had her say it outside of instead of having him wrestle with it, they kind of have her say it and see in their back and forth and her anguish through it, and then she calms herself. Around the time that she calms herself, he pushes through the pain, and he centers himself, and he it seems like he could have gone forever if he wanted to, because he stopped fearing as well. He
right.
You could see the back and forth between what was happening in the room and what was happening and what she was saying to herself. You could imagine that the prayer that she was saying to herself is something that she said to him several times. So as she was saying it to herself to calm herself, he was probably saying it to himself internally to get through the ordeal. So that I really appreciated how they staged that scene, and that I think that was the same scene that Denny broke down at Variety earlier this week as well. So
I actually liked the scene with them two in the copter. I think that the silent dialogue with the hand signals, and then just them kind of communicating with each other, and then also after the fact that after they killed the soldiers, the Harkonnen soldiers that were on the copter, then going through that storm and making sure that you're kind of going with the flow of things, really was really a good interaction and a good kind of I would say a good lesson overall in terms of kind of going through this kind of a tumultuous storm and just kind of letting things kind of ride out the way that they ride out. So it was really fascinating. Again, it ties into a little bit of the Force and with Star Wars as well. But at the same time, they kind of presented it in a way where there's some nuance to it and also some interesting. It also kind of in some ways, a lot of that what you were speaking about in an earlier scene where they were speaking with their minds, that was kind of like practice, whereas this was kind of like this is actual real life, like we're gonna die if you don't execute this, if you don't execute these type of training, like just like follow through on your training and stuff like that. So it was very fascinating to kind of put it into action and actually that they were able to overcome that.
Yeah. I think you connected two scenes that were a little bit separate. So that they were in the Thopters. They were in the Thopter twice. So they were in the Thopter when they were being taken to be thrown into the desert, and I like that scene too. Basically because they worked together well, because they gagged her because they knew that she could use the voice, and she was talking to him and saying, if we're going to get out of this, we got to take care of this guy because he's deaf and the voice is not going to work on him. So he had to summon whatever he had to use the voice, because they knew that she was a Bene Gesserit and that she could use the voice, but they didn't expect that he could. So they didn't gag. So they didn't gag him. So the first thing that they had to do was actually kill Well, I think that what we which we did is take the gag off of her, so that
Mm-hmm.
she could get someone to kill the deaf guy, because if he didn't get killed, then they were going to have trouble because the voice wasn't going to work on him. So I appreciate the back and forth. And they're working with each other, and that's how. And then they meet up with Duncan, and then they meet up with the doctor,
Oh,
and then
okay. So it's a separate copter scene.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
and then they get overrun by the emperor's men, and then
Okay.
Duncan dies in a very heroic scene. He gives them a little bit more time. This is just before Paul very pompously says, "You know what? I can offer myself up as the to the emperor's daughter." It's like, and the doctor's like,
Oh boy.
you're on the run for your life. What is
Yeah, like what's wrong with you?
yeah.
Yeah.
So you definitely can see that he was born into royalty, or born into like what you would call it, where he thinks very very highly of himself even at 15. It's like
Yeah.
the emperor probably had something to do with most of your family being killed less than a couple hours ago. But yeah, you know what? He do well to have to give his daughter to me. Anyway, anyway, so they run away, and they get into a smaller doctor that only get a seat two, and
Ah,
that's the one that gets chased into the storm,
right.
and Dave Bautista's character assumes that they're dead because nothing can survive. I mean, they've been there for like 80 years, so they've seen these storms before, and no one usually survives it.
Mm-hmm.
But this is actually also the scene where, even though the guy at the end, and I forget his name off the top of my head, doesn't become his mentor, he learns something from him, because he has a vision of him being his mentor, and
Right.
he takes his advice. So he
Yeah.
was his mentor in a way. So it's like tragic. It's tragic that he had to kill him at the end, because because he wouldn't have survived without his advice in the middle of that
Right.
storm.
Right. And also it kind of messes with your mind too, because it's like, yeah, you're a mentor, but then he survives the storm, but then he had to kill him. And
Yeah.
it's like, and also I don't even think he wanted to kill him, because there was a point where they were in the fight, and then he was kind of like yield, and then they were like, no, you can't just say yield, you have to actually kill the guy. So it's
Yeah.
like, so in that regard, I think that he actually did want him to stay alive, but then because of the rules, he couldn't do that. He had to actually,
Yeah,
execute him
at a
because of
certain
that.
point, he was like, "Are you playing with me?" Because he was starting to dishonor him, right? Because he
Right,
wanted,
right, right.
yeah, he kept keeping him to a draw, and it was like he was playing with him. He's like, you need to end this, because you're at this point, you're, like I said, you're dishonoring the fight, and you're dishonoring me by playing around. So yeah,
Hmm.
he didn't want to kill him. Jessica even mentions that he's never killed anyone before.
Right.
And it's interesting. It's interesting on a couple levels. Like, he was supposed to be his mentor, and of course he's never going to be his mentor, except for the fact, like, the vision of him saved him earlier. But going forward, not just with this, but also the way that he saw Zendaya as very a submissive, like, desert girl, his visions can't be trusted 100% to be
No, they cannot.
to be what's going to come true in the future. So
Quick question about this is that he said that did he say that the spice was not the influence of those visions, and that it's just like a kind of a natural ability, or is it because the spice is like kind of
so
enhances him
they
to be
didn't
like that?
mention this, but Jessica took spice when he was in the wound. That's why he has enhanced abilities.
Ah,
That's also why. But him on spice, he get his abilities enhance even more. Um, you remember when the sandworm was gonna eat the spice miner.
yes.
He kind of zonked out, and that's because he was out of the copter the thopter, and he was next to the spice harvester, spice harvester.
Right.
And the spice was starting to influence him, and he zoned out and started to have vision. So
Right.
they definitely enhance what he already has, but because Jessica took it when he was in the wound, that's why he has these advanced abilities. I don't think
Makes
I don't
sense.
think they mentioned that in the movie, but this is
No,
just
I
something
don't think they did.
that you know from the other source material. So
Ah,
it's a combination. It goes back to the eugenic stuff that Benny Jessup was doing. So is he's the result of several generations of Benny Jesuit manipulation, of having different people have of children with other of specifically prescribing who the offspring spring of different people, and also, like I said, Jessica disobeyed her order by first having a boy, and I guess at this point in evolution that we can choose specifically whether or not we can have a boy or a girl. And actually, right now today we can do that. So I'm sure they could do it 10,000 years in the future. So she chose to have a boy, and she chose to take spice while he was in the wound, and she also chose to teach him the ways that, and she wasn't supposed to do any of that stuff. So that's why because she also would have known about this prophecy, or this thing that Benny Jesuit is trying to create. He's supposed to be like a double Messiah. He's the Messiah to the Fremen, but he was also supposed to be like a Messiah to the Benny Jesuit that the Messiah that they're trying to create. So she probably would have known about this, and she tried to force this force him to be this. So yeah, so the spice definitely affects him, but the spice has been kind of messing with his brain since he was an embryo. So yeah,
got it.
Yeah,
got it.
So who else do you want to talk about? What else do you want to talk about here?
One other thing is about they never. I don't know whether or not Josh Brolin's going to return as his character Gurney. They kind of left it kind of.
So this is weird. This is kind of spoilery for the next movie, but he's definitely going to require. So this is actually the character that I think Patrick Stewart played in the original movie.
Oh,
so Josh Brolin does return. He survives that attack. And he suspects, instead of Yue, is it Dr. Yue is the one who betrays them. He suspects Jessica.
Right.
And he like renounces the house and everything, and he becomes like a not a pirate, something like but he suspects Jessica. I don't know if it's because he never respected her because she wasn't a proper lady. She was just a consort or a concubine, but he suspects that Jessica is the one who betrayed Leto. So we will see if they're gonna do that in the next movie, but that's what happens in the source material. But yeah, we unfortunately we're not going to see any more Duncan Idaho. But they let him go out like a hero. Like not only does he keep hold people back, but he also pulls a knife out of his stomach to kill even more people before he dies. And like I said, I really even in the spoiler free part, I said that Jason Momoa is always charismatic and awesome on screen, so it was good. It was good to see him, even though his main job is Aquaman. You got to see him as a hero again in this movie as well. And yeah, Jason Momoa is doing good for himself, doing very 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 well for himself, and he's also has the Series C, which is I think it's going to get a third season. He was with Dave Bautista in that show as well, the Apple Plus show.
Well, in our birthday posts, online, basically Jason Momoa is like one of our top ones when we posted about his birthday. So it's like, oh, it was crazy. It was crazy how much love he gets.
Yeah, and he seems and it's not like someone. I think a lot of the love that he gets is also because he seems like just a genuinely like a nice guy, not just a nice guy, but like a chill guy as well. So right, which is nice. Who else? So we talked a little bit about Dr. Wellington Yue Chang Chen. What do you think about his heel turn there? His the situation that he was put in by Harkonnen.
Well, I mean, you kind of figured that, hey, you want to rescue your wife. I mean, I think that you have to. I mean, family comes first, and I think he had to make that choice to free his wife, and that meant kind of bringing down a dynasty.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what can you do? I mean, he was kind of in a bind in certain ways. So
Yeah,
I didn't actually mind it too much. I kind of understood, kind of felt how he felt.
Yeah, so there's speculation online that spider thing, that black spider thing that had human hands, and that the mother said to leave when they were talking,
Mm-hmm.
was his wife. Like he chopped her up and then like
Oh.
deformed her into some like a beast. So that there was some speculation there online that's what that was
Okay.
because what was around the Harkonnen in the books and in the movies were little boys. So they like I said, they got the little boys out and they put that weird beast in there.
Oh yeah,
weird
that didn't
spider
make any
beast.
sense to me. I was like, what is that? Like what? Like, oh, she can hear. Like, I think
It,
they even mentioned that she can hear our,
yeah,
like, she I can understand our language. And I was like,
understand English. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah. It's kind of weird in some ways.
They tried to say, well, it can't understand, but she used the voice on it and it moved, so it definitely could understand English.
Right,
So yeah,
right, right. So that was very fascinating.
yeah,
I think hopefully they kind of not resolve it, but they kind of continue
or
that
explain,
thread because they kind of left that there in
or
many
explain,
ways.
yeah, explain what's going on there. So
Right.
C.H. Chan mentioned that Duncan Idaho might show up again in the future as a clone of Duncan Idaho. So we'll see. We might see that. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that Jason Momoa is charismatic enough for that to probably happen. And if you're going with a lot of the comic books and stuff like that, and any of this type of genre stuff, you can never say never to people coming back. So
Coming back alive, yeah.
yeah.
I don't know. So he mentions that it might be one of the books or the sequels, but I don't know the source material that well, so I didn't read the book because it's super dense. It's um
Hmm.
there's also another book after this called Dune Messiah, and Denny is already this week mentioned that he wants to make a third movie based on Dune Messiah. So maybe in Dune Messiah, I I didn't mention this at the top when we were doing the spoiler free uh, um, review. I don't have a lot of experience with this material, but I do have some experience with this material. In the early 2000s, Sci-Fi did a show called Children of Dune, which is another book in the series, like later on in the series. And I actually own that DVD set, but I really don't remember anything that happened in that show. But I do remember the specific like general things, like the spice, the fact that spice, the people who are on spice have blue eyes. I remember like the voice and things like that, but I don't
Hmm.
remember much of anything else from that miniseries. Um, but I mean, if this goes well for Warner and also Legendary, they can spin this out to into a genre, sorry, into a franchise that just as successful as Star Wars
Yeah.
or the Marvel stuff, and they need more franchises to kind of pay for all the other stuff that they do. I mean, people complain, especially like auteur directors complain about these big movies, but movie theaters, I'm sorry, movie studios can't afford to fund a bunch of small films that don't make money unless they have franchises that make a lot of money.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, it does have that potential, I think, to be their Star Wars. I mean, the source material is there for that to happen. So, if they do a good job of kind of building this out, and I mean, they had Harry Potter way back when, about 10 years ago,
I mean,
all the way
I guess
back
they
to 20
sort of
years
still
ago.
have it. They're trying to milk it a little bit
Yeah,
with the
Fantastic Beasts. Yeah,
Fantastic Beast, but like um, J.K. Rowling has complicated that for them for a lot of
yep,
different reasons with
she
her with
has.
her transphobic rants. So yes, that brand is not like completely soiled, but it's or it's not completely destroyed, but it's tarnished a bit. So
Mm-hmm.
so they need something new, and hopefully people could continue to go out and see this movie, because once the Eternals hit next Friday, it's going to get bumped from all the IMAX
Right.
screens. So they have another week to make some money and actually um, justify making not just the next movie, but maybe a movie after that. So we shall see. Any other, I guess, thoughts about things in this
Yeah.
movie?
I think the one final thought that I have is that hopefully they go away from the source material in terms of the white savior complex. I think that you and I have addressed this already. Now we've talked about it at length. That there are some elements still there, and I think that if you want to respect the source material, fine, but I think it has to kind of evolve from there if you're going to bring in a larger audience, especially people of color, to these movies. Because you can say that, hey, Star Wars comes from this, but again, Star Wars did not really engender itself to people of color until maybe later, much later on.
Mm-hmm.
And even I would say that the prequels did not really inspire a lot of people of color to say, "Oh, let's go watch Star Wars." Like that really didn't happen.
They wasted Poe, and they also wasted Finn.
Right?
They just had them there.
Exactly.
Yeah. So I think that this has a lot of potential. It has its problems that can be fixed with the second movie. If they decide to do it, if they really do decide to lean into Chani as not. I mean, I don't know if she can be the main protagonist of the second movie, but if it's like a two-hander between her and Timothy Chalamet, I think that they can skid out of turn out of the skid, so they don't end up in the ditch. So Dave Bautista will be back in the next movie. Josh Brolin will be back in the next movie. Rebecca Ferguson will be back in the next movie. Hopefully, Javier Bardem has a bigger role. I can't imagine that. I mean, no one was guaranteed that there were going to be another movie. That they all hoped there would be another movie. But you don't get Javier Bardem in if you're not going to give him something to do, I assume. Mm-hmm. So now that the second movie is greenlit, they'll do something with Javier Bardem. There are a bunch of other characters as well that they didn't even introduce, like the Emperor and things like that,
right,
that they have to cast now for the next movie. It should be interesting who they decide to cast.
Who would they cast, though? I mean, that would be a very fascinating character to cast.
Not just the Emperor, but the Emperor's daughter. There are a bunch of characters. Harkin has another nephew who is just as brutal as Dave Bautista's character, who we haven't seen yet as well. That he's probably going to show up in the next movie. So there are a lot of people that haven't been cast yet that we're going to see in the next movie.
Who would you like to see as the Emperor? Because it was one of the characters where I'm like, they kept mentioning his name, and I was like, I wonder who could be that manipulative and Machiavellian. I wonder.
I always want more all the bad guy roles to go to his name is escaping me off the top of my head. The guy from The Mandalorian.
Pedro Pascal.
No. The bad guy from the bad.
Oh, Giancarlo.
Giancarlo Esposito. So maybe. I saw there was a meme going around saying that he should be the next, either the next Magneto or Doctor Doom or the next Lex Luthor. Yeah.
Right.
The 80s. C.H. Chan mentioned that the guy the person who played the Duke's other nephew was played by Sting in the original movie. In a giant, I remember images of that. He basically in a giant speedo and floating in the air. That movie is so weird. They're. I don't know who would you cast as the Emperor?
I don't know. I mean, I was thinking more. I was actually thinking more of an Asian character, but I don't know if that would be too Shang-Chi, too much Shang-Chi related.
I think it would mix
You
it
know,
up. I mean, it'd be
yeah.
it would make it less problem. It would make the colonization of Arrakis less problematic if it was a person of color. I don't know if it would be make it completely problematic less, but I mean, having the brown people colonized by white people is a problem. The fact that a brown person is colonizing other brown people doesn't make it the colonization any better. But it,
Right.
but you know,
Right, it doesn't. And I think, I mean, I was, maybe because the word emperor comes into play, it's like I'm attributing more kind of like the Last Emperor, the movie The Last Emperor, like more Asian. But I that would be very fascinating as to who that might be, in terms of like a deaf character. But I was wondering if you had a name. No, you said Carl. So,
I mean, I'm sure their lists are circulating now that we're gonna get a second movie. People have their fan casting, so I'll look for that. But I don't have anyone except for, like I said, he would just do a good job because he does a good job every time he plays a bad person, and he has the force and the gravitas to play someone royal as well. So yeah, I think
maybe someone that has had like that has had an experience as playing the good guy, then turn into a bad guy.
Yeah.
In some ways that would be really fascinating to like kind of turn this person into a heel. Like, name comes to mind is Keanu Reeves, but I think Keanu Reeves is maybe a little too young for that type of emperor type of role. I would think someone a little older.
They're probably going to have to cast someone 50 or older for this.
There we go. Yeah.
Well, that's not true. I was about to say, you know what, Keanu Reeves is. I keep thinking Keanu Reeves is young, but I'm aging with Keanu Reeves. So Keanu Reeves is. So I'm gonna be 40 in two months. So Keanu Reeves is older than me. So Keanu Reeves is in his 50s now.
Right,
so,
he is.
So, but he doesn't look it. He looks like he's in his sometime somewhere in his mid 40s, and you need someone who actually looks like an old 50 or like a 55 into his 60s to play the Emperor, I think.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I have to think about that. The other characters I don't really have any real attachment to, or thought about, like the other nephew. It's gonna be it's be interesting to follow Sting, but I don't know who should play that. But I'm looking forward to the second. I'm looking forward to the second movie. All right. So, any other thoughts? Any thoughts from the chat? I know you're monitoring Facebook. I'm looking at YouTube chat. Any other questions from chat before we close up?
Not that I can see at the moment. No, not so much. Anything in there?
Okay. I don't see any other questions from or comments from the chat here on YouTube either. So. Anyway, that is what we thought about the movie. We would like to hear what you guys think, though. So please comment down below and like and subscribe for more content like this. And we will see you next week when we talk about the Eternals. All right, guys. Bye. Thanks.